Hi, my name is Kyle Clower and I'm with Serve Wisconsin. We are the Wisconsin National Community Service Board. We work the AmeriCorps programs in Wisconsin and strive to promote national service and volunteerism throughout the state. We're so very pleased to be sponsoring the Governor's Service Awards again this year, and we're interviewing all this year's honorees. And today we're talking with DeShanda Williams, who's being honored as AmeriCorps Alumni of the Year. So congratulations, DeShanda.
Thank you. Woo.
Thank you so much for talking with us today.
No problem. I'm glad to be here.
And then DeShanda, could you start off by telling us about your original AmeriCorps service experience and why you first decided to serve?
So my original service came post my undergraduate field placement in the drop-in center. It had been the second year that the drop-in center was open in 2011. And I fell in love with Pathfinders right away, actually. And I first met Joseph Stanley. And in our interview for my internship, he told me, "You already have all the tools you need to work with the youth here." And I was like, "No, I absolutely do not. I don't even know, I don't know what we're doing or what I signed up for, or I was a last minute intern. They were a last minute request for an intern. So it was just a perfect match based on that." And then as I finished off my internship semester for the spring and the summer, I was so involved. Our coordinator at the time, he had been a previous AmeriCorps. Joseph Stanley was actually the person recruiting and supervising everyone, interns, AmeriCorps members, whoever, and he was so invested in building me up. He would push me, he would pull me in the kitchen with youth. I learned how to cook. I didn't know how to cook before I came. I think the first thing I learned was enchiladas. And then there was some youth that didn't want me to leave. I had built really strong and positive relationships with some folks there. And then once my internship ended at the end of the summer, Joseph was like, "So, are you going to do the interview for AmeriCorps?" And I'm like, I guess so. I work at Wendy's right now, and I don't want to keep smelling like onions and nuggets. So sure. And I had talked to John, who was the program coordinator for the drop at the time. And I had talked to the two AmeriCorps members that were there at the time. And everyone was so encouraging. They're like, "Yeah, it's a good opportunity, especially if you just have one semester left of school. It won't be such pressure, or it won't be so heavy on you. It's a good entry-level start." And I had just had my daughter also the year before. And Joseph and John were really supportive to that. And so when I started, I just felt like it was the perfect fit. Like, I didn't think that I should be doing anything else. It was natural. And I had built some really good relationships with the young people. And I learned early on with Pathfinders that that's what mattered. The work that I was doing, the service that I was providing, and how I was being able to engage and build relationships with the participants that we served. And I was reminded of that all the time. So yeah, the recruitment, I felt like, was a really big investment. I didn't have a birth certificate. They were like, "Oh, we're going to get it." There was so much paperwork. They were like, "Oh, we're going to sit with you and fill it out." And yeah, I don't think I've ever felt that much support ever. And so that really translated to me after that, when I started doing my own recruitment. But yeah, that's how I initially got started. And I had learned that so many staff at Pathfinders had been interns, had been AmeriCorps members, and they had done service similar to what I did. So I seen a future for myself at the agency that I felt compatible with.
That's great. And then during your original AmeriCorps service with Pathfinders, were you primarily doing street outreach, serving in the drop-in center, or something else?
I wish I was doing street outreach. That's like I love street outreach. I was doing the drop-in center, which is the home base for our street outreach program. So yeah, I was one of the program assistants in the drop-in center that supported with groups and doing intakes and orientations. My most favorite thing to do was help youth in the clothing bank. I didn't realize how much I actually liked shopping with other people until helping youth in the clothing bank. That was like the number one thing that they want to do. "I want to go look at clothes. I want to go look at clothes." And it would just be so exciting, especially when I was meeting queer young people, because they would be going from one gender to the other. And I felt really comfortable saying like, "Oh, okay, that look cute on you." And we would just form like more relationships, like just so many. So yeah, I was in the drop-in center.
And I love the story about helping in the clothing bank. Are there any other favorite memories or highlights of your AmeriCorps service you can share with us?
Yeah, I learned gardening during my AmeriCorps service. That was our service project. Me and the other person, Tanya, at the time, we were AmeriCorps teammates in the drop-in center. And so our service project was a community garden event, and I learned how to do beds and dig dirt and make plants or food or whatever. I still don't know how to do it on my own, but I'm always willing to help be in a garden. We have this, the garden is still out in the parking lot, and I will not let Pathfinders let it go. Like, we need the garden, it's important. Someone will learn how to garden that is here already. Our CEO knows how to garden. So we'll, it's been a safe place for the youth that are here. And then my daughter she had come around a lot too when I was an AmeriCorps member. So when we had events like gardening events, or we would even go to music in the park, because we were open on Saturdays at the time. That was always really fun. We would meet the youth at the park. We would buy snacks. Boss subs was like our favorite thing to buy at the time. Chips, juice, waters, whatever. And we would just sit. It was like an informal engagement. And it wasn't just focused on, let me give you these basic immediate needs concerning homelessness, but it was also that socialization, that social emotional support where we got to actually be outside and laugh and, sing and dance together. So that was really fun. Doing groups was really fun. I didn't think that I liked doing groups at all, but we would have so many topics. I did a self-esteem and self-awareness group for Black girls during my AmeriCorps term. And I was so scared and so anxious. And there were some people that felt like, that sounds exclusive and not inclusive. And it was very much inclusive. There was more than just Black girls there. And we were able to build such a community around healthy relationships and talking about our goals and talking about how hard it is in the areas that we grew up in, and really building each other up, building that community amongst female identified people, because society doesn't really give us the space to do that. We always feel pit against each other. So groups, outside concerts, especially in the summertime, and gardening was really a highlight of my service, because I actually had a grandmother that gardened and I just would not ever help her. And then when I started doing it here, there was something fun about it, and I seen the value in it with people that weren't get that exposure naturally, but in the way that we had to set it up so that they could get that exposure. And we were growing like squash and zucchinis the size of like my head. It was just a great experience and great exposure for me.
That's great. And DeShanda, I know you're also currently at Pathfinders and that you've held several different positions there and had quite the journey helping serve homeless and runaway youth. So could you tell us about the different roles you've taken on at Pathfinders since your AmeriCorps service?
So similar to what I had learned that, this person was an intern, this person was an AmeriCorps member. So when I finished my AmeriCorps term, there wasn't any positions open at Pathfinders. And then I had went back to Wendy's. I was at Wendy's for like 6 years. And then I was applying for jobs. I applied for like 50 jobs. And I had a few interviews and I never got any job. And then the Wendy's that I was at got robbed. And I had came and I still had my keys for some reason. And I came, and him, our CEO, he was at the front desk. He was like, "Oh, DeShanda, I really want to talk to you about something." And I told him about my situation at Wendy's. He was like, "Oh, okay, I'm going to talk to you as soon as possible." And I met with him, and that was my first permanent position. I got hired on as a youth organizer. And I was able to take youth out in the community, go to different events. And then I was able to get them connected to like political supports or knowledge and get them more involved in the community. And then my role transitioned into case management. I found myself really learning how to work with youth and their challenges, meet them where they are, learned really quickly our evidence-based models of trauma-informed care and harm reduction. And all of that stuff became so exciting to me. And then I was able to transition into becoming a program manager for the drop-in center, which was my dream job. When I first got there, I knew that I wanted that job as soon as I got there. And it happened. And I was able to shift the space more to meet the needs of the youth as far as the type of staff that they were looking for. We always listen to our youth here. And so I was able to really manage that situation. And then I did program management for about 2 or so years. And then I transitioned into being a director of runaway and homeless youth services. And in my case management role, my program manager role, and my director role, I had been able to supervise AmeriCorps members. That was something I really wanted to take on and do because I seen it as an opportunity for people that may not have it otherwise. For somebody like me that was applying for jobs and not getting them just based off of my interview alone, then meeting young people who seen me as a role model for them and wanted to do what I was doing, we were able to bring them on as AmeriCorps members, and we continue to, and currently we still have them. I was able to really continue what Pathfinder does and bring on these AmeriCorps members, and then we have so many that are in full-time roles at our agency now. And so all of the staff that I once knew, everything has like changed and transitioned, but I feel so proud to see people that I was able to help hire or support from giving service as an AmeriCorps member. So I get so excited about that. And if I can have all of the AmeriCorps spots, I will take them because they are really helping people that didn't know they can work in this field, didn't know they had the skills, or didn't know that they could be supported in the work that we do. So many people think that, oh, I need to have this advanced degree or, you know, this type of credential. And we are able to really show that you need to be committed and passionate about service and about helping people. And we need to show how service is valuable to our community in general. And so I feel really grateful that during my time, we've been able to recruit people that if this wasn't an opportunity, they probably wouldn't be doing this work, and they wouldn't, you know, be feeling like fulfilled or satisfied in the way that they report they feel now. So I feel like there's been a big difference since I was an AmeriCorps member.
That's wonderful. And then DeShanda, can you tell us about some of the overall impacts that Pathfinders has been having on the community through its service to youth in Milwaukee?
I think especially right now, we have really showed ourselves to be super committed to the youth that we serve. And we haven't changed listening to their voices and listening to what they say the community needs are. And so for me, it's just keeping consistent and persistent with that. Putting youth voices at the center of what we do is very important. We don't put or force anything on them, and we don't take on any outcomes or funding requirements or expectations that's not aligned with what our youth needs are. Being able to maximize on the experience that our youth have, not only, you know, just for stories or, you know, photos, but to provide them employment and supportive employment, and to build up their skills and their confidence, and to see some of them go on to higher education, to permanent roles and things like that, has helped our community in, I think, a very different way, because now we're helping families. And specifically in the drop-in center, which has been the majority of my experience, we're helping families of color really build their households up. We've taken on AmeriCorps members that haven't quite aged out of our services yet, but that income has also helped them get housing, and they've been successful since their term. So in a kind of a micro scale, we've made this connection financially, skills-wise, supportive-wise, and then I think in a more community-based level, we've helped some families that may not have had this opportunity anyway. And then Pathfinders is constantly growing. So, you know, we're constantly thinking of ways that we can complete the circle holistically in how we care for our young people. So whether it's being out on the streets, which is our initial contact for many people in the community, to coming into the drop-in center, to going to our youth shelter, to accessing housing resources in our supportive housing program, to supporting youth that are dealing with violence in their communities, whether that's physical or sexual abuse or mental emotional abuse, being able to provide them with an advocate. Even the fact that we have a middle school upstairs, those students not only feel like that is the school that they want to be in when they're supposed to be in a traditional NPS school, they also feel really connected to the rest of our services. And so we're helping so many more people. The way that we do counseling, it's not one-on-one sessions. You don't get dismissed from the counselor if you don't show up. It's very non-traditional. All of our services are voluntary, and so you feel welcome. We de-escalate youth as soon as we walk in the door. If the lights are dim and the diffusers are on and they see a pretty fish tank and some nice furniture and clean areas and safe people, I think we're making a big impact and a big difference. One youth told me that if the world operated how Pathfinders operates, where they don't have to pay for food, they don't have to pay for housing initially, they can get chances and chances and chances at gaining income and jobs. They don't have to pay to do laundry, to lock their things up, to go to sleep, that they probably wouldn't be in any trouble at all. They don't feel like they would be trying to figure out ways to get money that are illegally wrong or harmful. And so we hear so many stories like that, where if Pathfinders was what society looked like or how society operated as, that people will feel better off and have like they have a more quality of life. And we serve so many people of color here that it tells us how much of a need that people have. And it also shows us that people, they want and need to be around safe people and to be in safe places. And so why not give it to them?
And then DeShanda, could you describe the therapy program that you launched to help address trauma and mental health with the youth that Pathfinder serves?
When I came back as a program manager, we had this big grant and we had already applied for a trauma specialist. And I'm like, no, you know, as soon as they think of anything here, my wheels start turning. And I'm like, no, this is what we need to do. And so the way it rolled out, it did not fit the program and it wasn't working in the way that the grant was written. And so what happened was I went along with it. We hired people. I think we had hired about 3 or 4 people and it didn't work. So I just said, forget that. We're going to turn that into a case manager. We'll have 2 case managers in the drop. And then we just continued on because trauma-informed care is an embedded foundation. It is a principle that we live by. So we all have it. Now, something I learned from the focus group of that year where youth, so when I first started in 2011, youth didn't like me saying that I was a social work intern because there's stigma around what social workers do. So I would always just say, okay, I'm here to help. Whatever you need, I'm here to help. So then in this focus group in 2018, these youth said they want, you know, more hours, more days, more staff, but specifically they said they want a therapist in the drop-in center. And we were all taken aback, like, wait a minute, a therapist, you know, and it was really aligned with what the staff were seeing in the drop-in center, which was more youth feeling comfortable with talking about episodes that they may have been experiencing, talking about hearing voices or having certain delusions. The more youth that were comfortable with that, we did notice that that was a shift because there is stigma around mental health and seeking counseling, especially in the Black community. And so in this focus group, it was mostly Black male identified young people. So we tried to have multiple focus groups so that there could be more youth involved. And I think we did about 3, and sometimes there would be some queer identified youth, and sometimes one of the other times there was like 2 female identified young people. But the guys, they were adamant. They said, no, we want to talk to somebody about what we're experiencing. And so our grant manager, Liz, and I, we got together and we wrote a grant to Bader Philanthropies about a trauma-informed care therapist role who would be available in the drop for immediate crises to help youth with psychoeducation and learning about the symptoms that they may be experiencing, to have some support parallel to the goals that they're trying to reach, because a lot of times counselors, they may not do an overlap of trauma work and whatever other challenges that their client might be facing. And so we were able to hire a therapist and it just took off so successfully. We started doing groups, wellness groups, where youth were able to come up with the topics and facilitate the groups. Then the youth wanted to hold adults accountable. So we listened and we brought in law enforcement, we brought in therapists to these wellness groups, we brought in funders to these wellness groups, and they were able to have some real genuine conversations with adults in the community and explain how they would like to feel safer and more supported. They learned so much. And then I was actually giving them gift cards for this because I felt like they were doing labor, and they were like, no, we don't need that. We just need to keep having this space to talk about what we're going through, what we're experiencing, and how we need support, better support from the adults in our lives. And so as we continued, the therapists just continued to show very successful, where now there's some youth that want ongoing sessions. And so we figure out how to transition them into counseling out in the community. There's youth that just want groups. They just want to sit and have conversations about what they're experiencing and get that therapeutic support. Some youth just want to have activities that they play and do specifically just with the therapist. And the therapist also is supportive to staff, where they're able to say, hey, like, you know, take a break, or let's breathe together, or do you want to try one of these activities that they would also do with a young person. And during our debriefs and our consultations around clients, this therapist is able to help some of the staff really think about the trauma, the generational trauma that young people have experienced, the co-occurring and current trauma that young people experience. And so it's very exciting because now we get to build up this role and have interns, clinical interns. And so now we have more therapists available for youth in the drop-in center to really normalize talking about mental health, talking about emotions just in general, and just feeling supported in a really gentle and a way that is saying that, you know, what you're going through is a part of, it's a journey, it's a part of your journey. And so these things may never go away, but there's things that we can do to get through, to work through, and to be successful, because it's not a destination when we're talking about the trauma that we're experiencing. It's not an end date. It's you experienced that and it was a part of you. What happened to you, we can work through, and we can find coping strategies, and you can get support from safe people. And so, yeah, that role has proven to be so exciting, and now it's my dream role. I wish I could do it.
And then DeShanda, could you tell us a little about the connection you had at Pathfinders with the Wisconsin Association for Homeless and Runaway Services, with Pathfinders receiving their AmeriCorps grant funds as one of their host sites?
I do want to just, briefly just pay homage to Patricia Balke, because she showed me that women can do it, women can lead, and we don't have to necessarily change who we are. We can show up in strength and support and nurture and still lead successfully. She was such a gentle person. She was so solution focused, and I feel like I learned a lot just from seeing her, how she operated through AmeriCorps. Granted, most of it was via email. She could jump on the phone with us, even in person. She would be like, just having these really normal and simple conversations that didn't have to be about anything professional, but just that relational piece that we operate off of here. She carried that too. And so I just want to really pay homage to her, because she means a lot to the history of AmeriCorps and a lot of our first starts into this field. So beautiful spirit. And I know that she's going to continue to live on with us for sure. So many of us are connected to her and her lineage. So yeah. I think she's legendary. I just want to, put that piece out there about her.
She definitely will. I know that WARS is one of our 2 longest running AmeriCorps programs in the state, going on for well over 20 years, and she was a huge part of that for decades. And DeShanda, we just want to say thank you so much for the work you've been doing. From your original AmeriCorps service to how you've supported the growth of AmeriCorps members serving at Pathfinders, and how you've continued to make a difference, expanding what Pathfinders does to help homeless and runaway youth in Milwaukee, and just making a huge impact on the community. Congratulations and thanks again.
Thank you. I'm still very much overwhelmed.